this thing has adopted and changed for years. It's a framework for talking about the morality of war. Now, Jewish just war tradition. I got to say this, though, about the Christian just war theory. This is the one problem with it. Well, it's got many problems. Its one problem is it's got many problems. It's not biblical. You will not find the just war theory in the Bible. So it's kind of odd that Orthodox, Catholic, and many Protestant traditions endorse the just war theory, yet it has no scriptural foundation whatsoever. In my book, I have a section, the just war theory in the Bible. Then I have the next section. there's like a sentence there, because there's nothing to say. The Jewish just war tradition. Judaism has its own just war theory. For example, it talks about just cause. There are three types of war in the Jewish tradition: holy wars, obligatory wars, and permitted wars. Holy wars are an historical oddity. Book of Exodus, that's pretty much it. Obligatory wars are wars of national self-defense, and Judaism does not support the idea of spreading the faith at the end of a sword. Never has, never will. The use of force regarding religion is acceptable only when the freedom to worship God according to one's conscience is threatened. Wars of national self-defense and wars to protect the needy and the weak are not just permitted in the Jewish tradition, they are obligatory. They are an obligation. Or as Leviticus 19 puts it, you shall not stand idly by when your neighbor's life is at stake. Legitimate authority. Defensive wars in the Jewish tradition have their own authority. If Israel is being attacked, you don't have to wait for some supreme authority to say, oh, this is a war of national self-defense, you can go shoot those people now. No, it comes. It becomes with the actual war itself. But other wars require the consent or the permission of a competent authority. In ancient times, it was religious bodies of leadership like the Sanhedrin. Today, it's associated with the national government. The government gives the authority. Right intention, like Augustine, great scholars like Maimonides recognize that war is always regrettable but sometimes necessary, and it could only be waged if the intention was to bring peace. If the intent was pure, he said, it rendered this normally abhorrent action tolerable. Last resort in microproportionality. If you look in Deuteronomy chapter 20, it requires that their terms of peace be offered to any city before the siege is laid upon it. But if they accept the peace, they will be sold into slavery. So, hardly acceptable terms for most people. Maimonides taught that an enemy had to be offered 3 opportunities before engaging in conflict. First, you had to offer your enemy the opportunity to run away. Secondly, you had to try to make a peace accord with them. And finally, before you began the battle, a warning to prepare to fight. Furthermore, he said that when Jewish armies laid siege to a city, they could only surround the city on 3 sides and always leave an avenue of escape. He did caution, by the way, you should monitor it to make sure there aren't troops coming in through that avenue, but you should allow people, it should be a one-way street. You're allowed to leave. And this concept of a Jewish just war tradition, which also includes discrimination and macro-proportionality, this is archaic. I'm quoting, medieval rabbis. Come on, the Israeli Defense Forces protocols come right from this. The modern Israeli army follows these protocols. In terms of Hus and Bellu, Judaism offers one of the most robust ecological war ethics out there. It forbids acts such as cutting down fruit trees and olive trees, poisoning wells, salting fields, because they are inherently disproportionate, because they condemn the next generation to starvation. There is an inherent post-bellum consideration. In modern times, this principle, they have extended to prohibitions against targeting infrastructure necessary for human existence: electricity, hospitals, bridges, rail lines, etc. Here's what's interesting in Judaism, though, about proportionality. In the Jewish tradition, if a war is just, any amount of force is justifiable. There is no disproportionate use of force once the war is declared just. There is no micro-proportionality, essentially. But if a war is unjust, if it doesn't meet all of these 5 criteria on the left, then no amount of force could ever be justified. It all hinges on macro proportionality. Turning to Islam and the just war tradition. Islam is in trouble. Modern contemporary Islam, when it comes to war, has a serious problem. How to interpret the jihad tradition and who speaks with authority within that tradition. Historically, when you read jihad, it sounds remarkably similar to the just war tradition. War is regrettable, but sometimes necessary. One should always seek peace, welcome peace, even if it's not a perfect peace. War can only be considered legitimate when jurists or scholars have declared it so. That's the tradition. The modern jihadist movements, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, have perverted this tradition in Islam. They have seized upon themselves the authority to interpret the Quran and the Hadith and apply it to contemporary problems. Within Islam is an extremely intellectual religion that is very legal-oriented, it's got protocols, it's very rational, it's extremely rational. These movements have done. Osama bin Laden is allowed to issue fatwas, according to Al-Qaeda. A fatwa is an official teaching that only a jurist or a Sharia scholar has the authority to issue. His authenticity is grounded in the fact that he's rich. Islam is debating jihad. Should it be interpreted metaphorically? What kind of conditions be placed around it? How do we take this ancient principle and adapt it to modern times? But rogue elements that call themselves Muslim are feeding off of political alienation and impoverishment brought on by post-colonialism in the Arab and other parts of the world. These radical ideologies are taking advantages of advances in telecommunications to speak for Islam. Whereas once when people used to go to their mosque or their school to learn about how to read and interpret the Quran and the Hadith and apply it to contemporary problems, now they go to the internet, where quite honestly, I could be a Sharia scholar in 20 minutes. That'd be a very bad thing. I do need to say this because we are combating ignorance in our country. Al-Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, and other jihadist groups are not Muslims. They're using the mask or image of Islam as a moral cover story for their political and economic agenda. The analogy I use most often is they are as Muslim as the Ku Klux Klan is Christian. The Klan is a Christian organization, they claim. Hey, their primary symbol is a burning cross. They must be Christian. Yet I have yet to find any mainstream, normal, rational Christian who would ever claim that the Klan is a Christian organization. They are so far beyond the pale, they don't represent Christianity. They use Christianity, they don't represent Christianity. These jihadist groups are very similar to that. So I'd like to end where we began. Oh, by the way, oops. Uh-oh, I'm experiencing technical difficulties. I want to end where we began. War is about killing. I have reason to hope. Look around this room. It is packed. People of their own free will came out on a Wednesday night to learn more about faith traditions that they don't know about. That is a sign of hope. We don't want to be ignorant about our brothers and sisters. No matter where you fall on that spectrum, are you a pacifist? I doubt there's a lot of holy warriors around tonight, but if they are, talk to Porg. Or where you fall within the just war tradition. I don't care what your religious convictions are, whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, agnostic, atheist, Hindu, Buddhist, searching, questioning.